What up and welcome to Rama Screen YouTube channel, and here's my review of Netflix new documentary series Surviving Black Hawk Down. Let's rock this. Now, we've all seen the 2001 movie Black Hawk Down by director Ridley Scott, right? I remember watching it only once back when it came out in the theaters, so it has been a while. But as I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the movie painted the American soldiers as the good guys and the Somalis as the bad guys. So it was a very much black and white approach, albeit a damn good movie, I give you that, but there's no gray areas to it, you know what I mean? And now, after 31 years since the Battle of Mogadishu, this documentary finally arrives to tell us what really happened there and then. And I've already watched the entire thing, and I can confidently say that this, hands down, has got to be one of the best military documentaries ever made. Because unlike the narrative adaptation in 2001, this documentary actually goes knee deep in the nuances, meaning it gives you all the shades from the army side and the Somalis, and by the end of it, there was plenty of blame to go around. And turns out, just like any other war, this too is not as simple as you make it out to be. Surviving Black Hawk Down is gritty and visceral and frenetic and brutal, and it did a phenomenal job of taking the audiences into the heart of what a real combat looks like, while simultaneously highlighting how much something like this is costing our humanity. Directed by Jack McInnes, Surviving Black Hawk Down tells the gripping real story of the horror and heroism behind the events that inspired Ridley Scott's blockbuster movie Black Hawk Down, blending raw, immersive storytelling with first-person interviews from both sides of the Battle of Mogadishu. One of the things that stands out about this docu is the way that they stitch the reenactments with the retelling of the events by the talking heads who basically somewhat direct where those reenactments should go. So when they say something like, oh, and then we enter a Somali home, and that is when the perspective switches to the Somalis inside that very same home. And kudos to the docu filmmakers for tracking down the survivors from both sides who, after all these years, could still relive that terrifying memory in their heads, which I'm sure to this day still shakes them to their core. The documentary also has that atmospheric vibe to it that gives you a sense of discomfort. You immediately understand why nobody would want to find themselves in that unpleasant predicament. I mean, just like the Somali cameraman keeps saying again and again in this docu, I was afraid for my life. I was afraid for my life. Yeah, I bet you were, because I would be too. The shootouts are intense, and some of the unexpected twists are pulse-pounding, like the way they describe how far and how much firepower they have to deal with in order to get to the crash sites. The virtue of leave no man behind has never felt stronger than what those soldiers experienced that day. And finally, I don't mean to condone nor villainize our troops with the following statement, no. But you gotta understand that most of the young adults who join the military are still just kids coming out of high school in desperate need of a purpose. And then they get trained to have the mentality of when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So with that kind of mindset, what did you expect to happen then? And I am a big believer in every country should decide their own fate. No other country, let alone superpower like the United States, should decide it for you. But Somalis, what are you doing, man? You keep following and idolizing warlords who only enrich themselves and starve your own people. And that leads to my one criticism about this documentary, in that it doesn't put the blame where it belongs, which is the elected officials of the United States. By that, I mean the president and the congressmen in suits who send your kids to die in needless wars because, God forbid, they send their own kids. They would rather send your kids out of high school, recruit them, and train them to bully black and brown people in some godforsaken country. So the fault lies with the American government, who continuously cause this mess with their interventionist policy, maybe because some multinational corporations have some interest in certain natural resources. It's fucked up. It's totally fucked up. But I kind of understand why this documentary lets them off the hook because it wants to just highlight the camaraderies of the soldiers and the suffering of the Somali people. But that piece of information about the policymakers who are actually to blame for all this would have made this documentary even more nuanced than it already is. So, yeah, overall, I give Surviving Black Hawk Down the rating of 4.5 out of 5. Dare I say that this is one of the most powerful documentaries of all time. Absolutely outstanding. It holds a mirror up and compels you to self examine and self reflect.